Hi, I'm Phil, and in this video we're going to have a look at for loops. If I have a task that I want my code to do in processing that's very repetitive, I'm going to just paste in a little bit of code here that counts from 1 to 5, and I'm going to print that out into the console. So this is a very repetitive task. It's running the same function, but the only thing is changing is the number that we're printing out. Rather than writing this out over and over again, we can use a for loop to do repetitive tasks such as this. So let's have a look at how our for loop works. It starts with the word for, then we open some round brackets, some parentheses, and then we have our curly brackets. Inside the parentheses there are three statements. The first one, let's call the initializer. Then we have a check, and then we have an update. And then inside our for loop, we have some function that we're going to run. So let's print line something. The initializer is a little bit like the setup function in processing. It runs once at the start of our for loop before it runs anything else. So I'm going to use it to create an integer, and the name I'm going to give that integer will be I, and I want its value to be 0. The next thing I want to do is write a check, or a check statement. It's going to see whether I is less than some number. Now here I'm printing out up to 5, so let's make I less than 5. And then finally we have our update. And the update is going to run at the end of our code. So I'm going to put I plus plus. Now what this does is it increases the value of I by 1. It's a little bit like writing I equals I plus 1. Then for our print line function in here, we can then print out the value of I. And we're going to imagine that our console down the bottom here is where we're going to print out our information. So let's think about how this works. The first thing is that I is created with a value of 0. The second thing is it runs the check. Is 0 less than 5? Well, guess it is, so it will run this code here. So the first thing it prints out is 0. Then it runs the update. The update increases the value of I by 1, so I is now equal to 1. Then it runs the check again. Is I less than 1? Sorry, is I less than 5? 1 is less than 5, so yes, so we print out 1. And then we run the update again. I is now 2, 6 less than 5, so we print out. Then I is increased by 1, becomes 3, that's less than 5, so we print out. Is increased by 1 times 4, that's still less than 5, so we print that out. And then when I is incremented again, its value is increased by 1, it is now equal to 5. So this here becomes false. This won't print out 5. The advantage of this is this number can be anything. So if I erase 5 here and put in, say, 1000, then processing will happily count out from 0 down to 999. And that's a lot less code than writing this out by hand. So this is a really trivial example of how a for loop works. We have an initializer, we have a value that is checked, and we have an update. And then we have some code that generally does something with that value that is initialized and updated and checked. So let's quickly have a look and see whether what we've drawn here matches up with what happens when we write this in code. Now I'm just going to add this line here afterwards. So you can see that it's printed out 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's gone on to the next piece of code after the for loop. So this is really useful if we want to write out much larger numbers. So that is a very quick introduction to the for loop.